Hello everyone. Today I would like to discuss the 2013 Chinese film known in English as A Touch of Sin. The film, directed and written by acclaimed auteur director Zhangke, presents an anthology of 4 loosely connected stories centering on violence and individual struggle in modern China. One of the reasons I was interested in covering this film is its style and content marks a remarkable departure from the signature elements of previous Zhangke films. Most notably, the turbulence and violence which thematically punctuates the film can be considered unusual, given his standard modus operandi of long shots and takes. I strongly encourage those who have disliked their experience with Zhangke or Chinese art film at large to watch Touch of Sin for a number of reasons. First, it is notably less boring than Zhangke's older, more well-known films such as Platform and Still Life, whose lack of defined plot structure and progression are often noted by disappointed viewers. On the other hand, A Touch of Sin relies on sporadic acts of impulsive violence in which Zhangke spares nothing in depicting the absolute gore and destruction. The scattered, diverse nature of the film allows a wide-reaching survey of regional differences in China. Hence, the viewer is able to understand the multiplicity of identity within the nation and find what aspect interests them the most. Nevertheless, one of my favorite signature Zhangke elements that is revered in the film is the choice of beautiful landscape shots combined with a hint of absurdity. Indeed, in the opening scene, right before the title card is flashed, the audience sees a panoramic view of a mountain road covered with tomatoes from a flipped truck. Soon after a character bites into one, an explosion occurs that is followed by an immediate cut. No information is ever shed about this explosion. This kind of visual beauty, but also an appreciation for unexplained bizarreness, makes Jia's film unusual, but also supplements the viewing experience by surprising the viewer. Zhangke is a master of using small, unexpected quirks in his film to better demonstrate larger trends, especially about the current reality in China. The film's repeated symbolic motifs offer an accessible encapsulation of Zhangke's social critique without diluting the specific artsy complexity that is seen in his other works. Throughout all 4 stories, we see shots and hear conversations about both wild and domesticated animals. In the closing shot of the first story, we see a horse pulling a cart with no master guiding it. In another, fish are released from a small plastic bag into a pond. And yet another, a conversation is held about animals possessing the complex ability to commit suicide. This visual depiction of animals enters into an interesting conversation with the topic of violence, when we remember the term animalistic is often used to describe acts like murder. By exhibiting the emancipation of animals, Zhangke inverts the standard symbolic representation, especially in the conversation of violence. By lifting the spiritual value of animals' existence out of a state of servitude to humanity, the film implies violence is not a random impulsive act like that of an animal that emerges from our primal subconscious, but rather is a rational, albeit desperate, decision in the face of insurmountable oppression, identity negation, and alienation. Additionally, just as humanity justifies the farming and pet ownership of animals through dismissal of their inherent rights or conscience, Jia seems to imply human dignity has lost its honor through the construction of a system that honors a more vacuous signifier, money. Specifically, the physical manifestation of monetary value, paper bills. In one scene, the actress Zhao Tao's character is beaten by a corrupt official with a stack of bills in an attempt to intimidate her into offering sexual services. In another scene, a character's family splits up a dividend of money into pedantic piles. In both situations, cash stands in for a more emotional and intangible bond between people. Characters seem to think money can stand in for a more serious physical intimacy. Whether it be sex or fraternal connection, both symbols work jointly to express China's capitalist development that has put so much focus on the spiritual empty emblem of status and money that it forces people into violence to restore their human dignity. In the final scene, a traditional Chinese performer utters the line, "Do you understand your sin?" The bloodshed of the film is not Jia expressing the horrors of unique incidents, but demonstrating the widespread liability for allowing society to fall to such a state, mostly through misplaced priorities and the pursuit of wealth as justified by extreme acts and behaviors. Zhangke said this about the film. I decided to make this film because there have been sporadic outbreaks of violence in China. I thought the events happened by chance, but after researching online, I realized there was more of a fundamental reason behind these events. From this perspective, the film offers a tapestry-like view on an eternal problem, the question of what forces humans to violent means, but also that is embedded in the paradoxes of Chinese modernization. The type of violence exhibited in each scene, in one a shooting rampage, another a defense killing against a sexual assailant, and yet another a suicide. What these different forms have in common is that the characters all seem to act against forces larger than themselves. When they feel they no longer have the agency and mobility to combat these systems of oppression, they turn to unorthodox extra-legal means, aka violence. Indeed, Zhangke himself said in a press note regarding the film, "Resorting to violence is the quickest and most direct way that the weak can try to restore their lost dignity." In this manner, the audience learns about the inequalities and structural marginalization experienced in China through the perspective of a classical and ubiquitous human issue. Problems such as worker alienation, political corruption, and familial disinvolvement are all put on display, and often serve as the impetus for these characters' outbursts. These problems can be considered consequences of the rapid shift of capitalism since the 80s in China. Indeed, those who try to get wealthy during these transitions are characterized as villains, and those who try to react against this unjust economic oppression find no outlets for their frustration. Additionally, the film adapts wuxia or martial arts films to a modern setting, as opposed to its standard ancient or fantasy environment. We gain a new understanding of the heroic character, as well as the way violence is used to cope with injustice. For this reason, those interested in dynastic and traditional China would be interested in this movie, as it uses traditional modes of storytelling as well as archetypal heroic storylines to lead a discussion on challenging aspects of oppression built into the PRC today. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you guys really now want to check out A Touch of Sin by the director Zhangke.